Hi y'all, I'm Chase. This is my 2013 Dyna Fat Bob with a 103, affectionately known as Mary Jane, and I am on my way out. I am taking a trip up to see my cousin, and this is my happy fun time gravel road I have to go up, and man, I hate this road, but I want to ride, so I do it anyways. I've been talking to a couple of friends, and they want to get into motorcycles and stuff like that, talking to people, and oh man, I'd love to, you know, get a little Dyna or a Softail or something like that. And if you're a real man, that's what you do. I mean, that's only real men ride big bikes. They don't start out on any little tiny Hondas or anything like that. I mean, even a Sportster. Ugh. What kind of horribly feminine man would want to start out on a Sportster? Well, honestly, even a Sportster might be too powerful for most people. 55 foot-pounds of torque, well, at least that's what my 883 had. That's what I started out on. And believe me, 55 foot-pounds of torque that's a pretty beastly little bike, honestly. Believe it or not, it's more torque than most people can even fathom. Because, you know, you're not talking about a little bit of torque on a car or something like that. There's not much weight to a motorcycle, even as heavy as all Harleys are. They don't weigh as much as a car. You know, the horsepower to weight ratio and torque to weight ratio is a lot smaller. You know, for a car, it's hundreds of pounds per horsepower. For a motorcycle, it's tens of pounds. Even a Harley will smoke most even sports cars. They're fast bikes. I mean, fast vehicles, actually. So when these people ask me about it, and I want to say, hell yeah, I actually think about it, and especially if you know the person. Are they prone to doing stupid things, making bad decisions? But overall, you think about, you want this person to learn to ride, and you don't want them to get dead while they're doing it. Because, I mean, they are, you know, acquaintances or friends, and so honestly, I've got to say no. As much as I love this Dyna, and I think I love this bike more than any bike I've ever had, and man, I really thought I loved my Sportster, but this bike, it is by far my most favorite bike I've ever had. I mean, I've had an Aprilia, I've had a Honda, or not a Honda, I'm sorry, a Kawasaki. Had two Sportsters, an 883 and a 1200. This one is by far the best bike, without any kind of competition at all. Now, I think I liked my Aprilia second best, but that was because it was a big combination of a bunch of different factors. And honestly, that would probably be the bike that I would tell people to start out on. Well, maybe not that one, but something smaller, maybe a 300 or something like that. Even a 500 is not bad to start out on. But something like this with 100 foot-pounds of torque or more, nope. I probably would have looped this bike. I would have yanked on the throttle just like I thought it was my little 125 or maybe a 250 dirt bike. because I did have a little 125 at one point, and man, I used to yank the throttle on that and I had no fear whatsoever. But if I'd have done that on something like this, I'd be dead. Or at least I'd ended up with a bike laying on top of me. So, as much as I'd like to tell someone, yeah, go ahead and start out on a Dyna, and it's not, I'd say, I'm against that. And there's another reason besides that, is how heavy the bike is. And now my Sportster was 500 and some pounds. I had put bags on it, and even that does not feel as heavy as this bike. This bike is somewhere between 670 and 700, I think. I don't remember exactly where. I think it was 675 or 680. I don't remember, but something like that. I took it in once to get it weighed at a scrap yard that's nearby. The guy let me weigh it, so I just wanted to see how much it weighed. So this thing weighs more than 100 pounds, and 100 pounds over what my Sportster weighed. And a Sportster is a heavy son of a bitchin' bike, at least for what it is. But that extra weight, you have to kind of get used to it. This bike sits a little taller than both of my Sportsters did. I mean, higher up. The center of gravity is in a little bit different place because of how high it sits. So, but my Sportster sat so low to the ground. My first bike was an 883 Sportster low, and then my second bike was a 1200 Sportster custom. So they both sit fairly close to the ground. I definitely would not recommend starting out on something like a Dyna or you know, like a Lowrider S on a Softail or something like that. And I wouldn't start out on a Japanese or Italian or German or Swedish or any of those bikes that are, you know, pumping out 100 horse and 70 foot-pounds of torque. Because really, I think that's just how people get hurt. You know, there's that, I don't know if it's a testosterone spike or what that causes it, but, you know, a lot of people go, oh yeah, I'm just going to get me a big, huge bike and then I'll be cool, and in all reality, you're probably just going to end up hurt pretty bad. Even a 600, you know, Japanese, you know, sport bike or something like that, that's a lot of horsepower and torque. But, I mean, if you're going to go, there's probably one bike that I will throw a caveat on, and it's probably a bike that you might be able to keep for a little bit longer. You won't have to move up as fast, or might not have to move up at all. I would probably start out, if I was starting today, I would probably go and buy a Rebel 1100. I'd set because it does have programmable modes, and I'd set it in rain mode and ride it that way. Honestly, my Aprilia had that. It had three or four modes. I rode it in rain mode for about, I don't know, 2 weeks, until I just popped it up to, I think it was touring or something like that, tour mode, or standard, I think it was. I can't remember what it was, but I rode it that way for about 2 weeks until I got absolutely used to the bike. After that, I could put it in sport, but you know, I found in sport it had too much engine braking and stuff like that. I just didn't like it, so I ended up putting it in tour because it felt like it rode, I don't know, smoother. The engine seemed to be smoother that way. It didn't seem to want to, I don't know, scream. But yeah, I'd probably go with that Rebel 1100. I mean, and then on top of that, you can also get it in automatic, or DCT, whatever you want to call it. And not having to worry about a clutch, that's an extra kind of helpful thing, because it's one less thing that you have to remember to do, and it makes it so you can concentrate more on your maneuverability, paying attention to the road, and you know, just, and you don't have to worry about engine braking as much. The bike does it for you. It just seems like an overall good bike to be a starter bike, because I think in rain mode, I mean, you could probably still get yourself in trouble. But also, the other thing I like about that bike is it literally tops out at 100 miles an hour. It has a limiter on it. So, I mean, that is, I mean, if I was a beginning rider, that would be kind of, maybe that's something I'd want. And maybe one day you will say, you know what, this bike is not enough for me, I want something bigger. Because technically, I think that bike is 470 some or 80 some pounds or something like that. And I think it's about the size of a Sportster. Now, that's not a touring bike, believe me. I've tried touring on a Sportster. I put bags and all kinds of stuff on my 1200. And it just, you could not make that bike a tourer because the frame isn't big enough to soak up bumps and stuff like that. It's just not a touring bike. Now granted, a Dyna is not really a touring bike, but it's a hell of a lot closer. They handle a little bit better, the suspension is better, and that's before I haven't done anything with suspension yet. But yeah, I think I would go with a Rebel 1100 if I was starting out today. That DCT trainee, that makes a big difference. That and the low weight. The weight is the low center of gravity in it. Programmable modes, so it's, most people, they end up getting a new bike because when they twist the throttle, it feels like you're not getting anything. You know, you start out on a 300 or something like that, and yeah, you can pin the throttle and nothing happens really. On that, you can go through the modes, so it's like getting a new bike almost every single time. So I would do that. That's what I would do. I would definitely not start out on a Dyna or a lowrider or a 1000 Ninja or something along those lines. I don't know if it's a good idea. Maybe you're a different person, who knows? Maybe you're an older guy and maybe you've got a little more common sense. But if I was, you know, in my 20s or early 30s again, I would definitely go with something smaller. And I don't think a Sportster is a bad bike to start out on because it's not like it's super duper powerful, but the weight is the biggest consideration, I think. And also the handling, the braking. They don't brake well, they don't handle well. I mean, it's like your 1950s guy. You're starting out on a 1950s era bike. Now granted, it does have some other things, you know, like fuel injection and stuff like that, so it's not like it's a total horror show or something, but I would start out on a 300 or 500 or something along those lines. Or, like I said, that Rebel 1100 and put it in rain mode and start out there. Plus, there's also the traction control, the anti-wheelie stuff, cruise control. Oh man, cruise control is really nice. I don't even have that on this. I wish I did, but yeah, I would definitely start out on a smaller bike. Don't let testosterone or a false sense of yourself make you think that you should start out on something bigger. Being dead doesn't impress anybody. Being an invalid because you were trying to be the cool guy, that doesn't impress anybody. But I think that's going to be all. comment, subscribe. Click that ding-a-ling if you want to be notified of any new videos I come out with.